Hello and welcome to season 14, episode 1 of Unlimited Opinions. I'm Adam Bishop.
I am Mark Bishop,
Can you
the
believe it's
one and
season,
only.
the one and only, can you believe it's season 14?
Yeah, I didn't believe we were going to have a season one. So it's all gravy here on out. Um, and we have picked a book,
Yes.
which I guess when people already click on this, that it'll be in the description, so it's no surprise to hear me say it.
hmm
Not like a big reveal.
No, it's not a big reveal.
It is The Conservative Mind,
Yes, by Russell
Russell
Kirk.
Kirk, and this was my second choice.
hmm
I think 2 seasons from now, if we're still doing it, we're
hmm
gonna have to do what's the name of the book said I was gonna
Rules
do?
for Radicals, Saul Alinsky.
Radicals. Either
Yes.
that or something left wing. Um, I think we need to branch out and do more critical. Like if you're gonna have me do Plato's Republic, I'm gonna make you do something left wing. But also, I think I've told this story before when my philosophy professors had uh, studied a guy. I forget the name of the guy. I should have wrote it down at the time, but he said it was a philosopher that was basically racist and kind of a horrible person,
Hmm.
and really justified like the Nazis and that kind of stuff. And so he invited a philosopher friend over to dinner, and as they're sitting, the guy of course has a library because
hmm
if you teach philosophy, you have to have a room that is a library. I
Right, of
think.
course.
I think linguistics almost certainly would have to as well. Like you kind of have a
Yeah,
library in your bedroom with all your bookshelves
yeah,
and
yeah.
stuff. It's you're turning your, I could see as a viewer, have the viewer look around, so you
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
think.
the viewer can look at, well, there's a bookshelf here to my right, there's two bookshelves to my left, and then a half bookshelf behind me. They're all organized too by topic, and then within the topic, generally some by year, some by author.
Well, when you get enough where you're in the Dewey Decimal System, then you have a library. But in any event, he said his friend came over for dinner and says, why do you have like the collective works of this guy? I mean, it's like
Right.
an entire shelf. And he said, well, it's important to know your enemy. It's
Sure.
important. You have to study that almost as much as what you believe. You have to study almost as much what is opposite of what you believe. And I am firmly convinced that that is correct. And in fact, when in my litigation practice, which I haven't tried a jury trial in like forever, but I would write out a closing argument for the opposing side.
Hmm.
So 100%. And you have to plan on what their evidence is going to be, especially if it's a tough case.
Right.
'Cause you have to anticipate what they're going to do, and if you're a plaintiff, then you can have rebuttal evidence, and so you have to know anyway. So I don't want to
Yeah.
go into legal stuff, but we've been reading stuff that we tend to agree with.
hmm
It's also we got to improve our content. Get those numbers up, those clicks up, and have some controversial takes or
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
Because
absolutely.
I have a sense that I'm going to be like agreeing with every word in this book.
Yeah, probably. Probably.
But I
Russell Kirk's a great author. I've only ever read one of his other books, Roots of American Order, which is fantastic. So this is my first time reading this. I was just looking up background information on it, of course, before we got it. Published in 1953. It was actually his doctoral dissertation
Oh, I didn't know that.
originally. They then expanded into the book form, but talking about conservative sort of tradition, right? The American conservative tradition, or American and British conservative tradition, right? Is there a consistent line of thought? Because as he mentions in this first, introduction chapter, the idea of conservatism, there's not really, or people on the left don't think that there is a conservative tradition. And so, 1953, he writes this book essentially arguing, well, no, there is. There's a very consistent idea of what conservatism is, articulated by these different thinkers at these different points in time, and everything like that. Kind of a hard book
Yeah.
to get a hold of.
Yes.
Because it is on Amazon, but the one that's like, I think, a more official publication, you have to like wait a month for it to ship for some reason.
Right.
So we have a copy from BN Publishing that I think is some sort of rip-off,
Oh,
knockoff
what is this?
publication. I was flipping through it. There's one page where the font and all of the margins just change.
Oh,
So I'm like, I don't think this is a legitimate publication.
is
So
this a
don't.
this is a
I
bootleg
think
copy?
I think it's a bootleg copy. I mean, I think it is. It has all the right stuff, but I think it's weirdly formatted, and really cheap feeling. Yeah, look at page 20 and 21. It just switches to Times New Roman all of a sudden. Um,
I hope we're reading the same book. Yeah, look at that.
yeah.
I like that better. I'll enjoy those 2 pages. Well, there's like a logo on the back. BN Publishing, improving people's life.
Yes. It's very, very official. I looked at their website actually because I was really interested in this.
But
I don't even,
wait a second.
yes,
Look at this. Wait. Let's go look at the back.
yes,
Improving people's life.
yes.
People's
As if
something's
everybody
wrong about
shares one life. Yeah, it should be improving people's lives. I think if you're referring to multiple lives of multiple people.
or is it there's an apostrophe S?
Well,
Improving
that's right.
people's.
People's, the life of people, but it should be the lives of people. Yes.
I guess it's not people's like as in nations. Like so
Yeah.
that'd be a plural possessive.
Yes. This is just referring to multiple people. You're improving their lives. It's improving
Improving
people's life.
people's life.
Yes.
It
I looked at
reminds
their.
me of let me finish my thought.
Sorry.
It reminds me of George Costanza, the great um, Festivus episode,
Mm,
where he is instead of giving out gifts, he's giving out I donated money to this charity in your name
hmm.
cards, and it was the Human Fund.
Human fund.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, people
No,
helping people,
money for people.
money for people.
Yes.
Thank you for that. That's very good.
Yes.
And it was actually the episode was titled "The Strike,"
Mm,
not
very good episode.
Festivus,
Yes.
but it was Cosmo Kramer's strike at the bagel factory.
Hmm.
Nobody, because they finally had a contract after 11 years, and they gave him salary increases, which was then the new minimum wage.
Yes.
Every line of that episode is funny. So if anybody has not seen that episode, should watch it and rewatch it every day.
Yes.
Until
Well, we
you memorize.
should get
Yeah,
into
I'm sorry. What was
the.
your point? I've interrupted you several
Oh,
times. You're
well,
going to
that's all
make
right.
some
Well,
other.
I was just gonna say I went to their website because it's the only like other thing on the back cover besides
Oh yeah.
their logo and the barcode is bnpublishing.com. I went there to see what else they offered. They don't even sell this book anymore. They were probably sued at some point in time. So this isn't listed. It's like just a bunch of like financial self-help books.
Huh.
So it's a really weird, probably based overseas publishing company. Yeah, so we have a very official copy of this
But
book.
we got it off of Amazon.
Yeah, we sure did.
So well, this is excellent. Hopefully it's copyrighted, Russell Kirk.
Yeah,
Hmm. We'll have to dig into that a little more. That's fascinating.
yeah. Okay, yeah, copyright 2008. I guess they have a copyright of some sort, BN Publishing. But yeah, very interesting. But yeah, let's get into the first chapter. It's only
Yeah.
like, 10 pages long, or not even. Starts on page 3, so 7 pages long, just describing well, what is conservatism, right? What is this thing that I am studying in this book? What are sort of the principles of conservatism? And he lists those a little bit later on. But you know what I said earlier, right? Is he kind of recognizes that not a lot of people have recognized that there is a conservative tradition. The first line of the book is "the stupid party." This is
Yeah.
John Stuart Mill's description of conservatives, right? And just the idea that conservatives don't really actually think about their thoughts. They don't really reflect on what they believe, right? It is the party of stupid people. There is no intellectual tradition, which I think is still the common belief today among people on the left. Just don't even recognize that there is like a conservative belief.
Yes. Well, and the people on the left tend to suffer from not studying their opponents.
Hmm.
And you see that now as Twitter and other alternative media kind of make some headway, and hopefully the Trump's new policy of these alternative media at the press conferences, hopefully some of that will continue on, even if a Democrat gets elected in the next time or the next time after
Hmm.
that or whatever, because the left is so unprepared to debate these issues, and I love, I really am excited about reading this book just from the introduction because it really
Hmm.
sets the tone. And I really appreciate how he uses language to explain stuff, and he's not dumbing it down. I actually had to look up a couple words in the introduction, to remind myself of the definition or make sure I had it right. But even that first line, well, he talks about the stupid party. The second line is like certain other summary dicta, which 19th century liberals thought to be forever triumphant. This judgment needs review in our age. I mean, what a wonderful way of dismissing the liberal criticism of conservatives, at the same time seeming like you're a great intellectual in describing it. I just like that turn of phrase.
Yeah.
So it's another summary dicta because it's so precisely. He has an efficiency of his words, is what I really like, and how he writes, and how he describes how they just come to this. Basically, you could write an entire book on that line, on why there are so many people of the left that have no idea, that just draw conclusions and just assert things
Right.
without any supporting argument or actual data about conservatives. And he says it in one line. That was brilliant.
Yeah, no, it's great. And then he, at the end of that paragraph, is where he sets out, what is this book for? He says, this study is a prolonged essay and definition. What is the essence of British and American conservatism? What system of ideas common to England and the United States has sustained men of conservative instincts in their resistance against radical theories and social transformation ever since the beginning of the French Revolution? Which is, it's a good question to ask. And then from there, he goes into a story, very beautiful author, talking about walking through modern Dublin, the birthplace of Edmund Burke, who, of course, he's going to cite as sort of the founder of modern conservatism, extensively, writing about Burke in this book, from what I know about Russell Kirk. But now he says, of course, Dublin, right, is this conservative old city, but the radicals are still increasing. And he says here, this is on page 4, he says, by and large, radical thinkers have won the day. For a century and a half, conservatives have yielded ground in a manner which, except for occasionally successful rearguard actions, must be described as a rout. I think that's very true. And in many cases, even more so true today, 73 years after he published this book, that, any successes that conservatives often have are very, very minor. Like he says, rearguard actions, it's constantly just sort of ceding ground to more and more liberal, more and more radical beliefs over time. He says that has also happened in Dublin, right? That has happened in the birthplace of Edmund Burke across Europe and across America as well, even by 1953.
And what's astounding, of course, is written before Trump entered the stage. Well, he was on the stage, but he was like a sideshow.
Yeah.
he wasn't a president. Reality TV star and celebrity present everywhere. But it's just so wild that that description that you shared with our listener is so accurate about how conservatives have, and he mentions the radical thinkers have won the day, and it's a rout. That the conservatives haven't really had any good victories, really substantial victories in many, many years. Until Trump, Trump is actually achieving in policy victories things that the conservatives in my lifetime have only been dreaming of. Nothing else. The Roe versus Wade overturning. I mean, that I really didn't think that was ever going to happen. It was too revolutionary. Could you ever convince a majority of the Supreme Court to overturn that decision? Even though everybody, even left-wing law school professors agreed it was poorly decided and poorly reasoned and not well written. But the fact that he was able to get that done through his appointments is just amazing. So we're seeing now some conservative victories, and it's from like the least quote unquote conservative president in my lifetime, or 100 years. But he's just racking up one victory after another. He has a lot of other views too, but people wonder, like the never Trump conservatives, wonder, well, why can people like me, Mark Bishop out in the small town lawyer out in the hinterlands, well, how can somebody like him be a Trump supporter when there's so many awful things like that? Like that video that he posted that ended up had Michelle and Obama Michelle and Barack Obama,
Hmm.
as like Jungle King characters. I don't
Yeah.
need to say more than that. I mean, it's just so outrageously vile. But they say, well, how can you support a guy who does that? Well, Roe versus Wade. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's one. His day job. He's doing a great job in his day job. It's
Hmm.
it's fascinating to me, and it's not to excuse bad things that people do, but the big but he's conserving the constitutional order.
Hmm.
People talking about this no king stuff and how he's and this is related to our reading. I'm not just going on
Yeah.
a
No,
rant.
no.
People talk about no kings and talk about how where he's a tyrant wannabe, but there are. I mean, I don't even know how to describe him other than knuckleheaded. Federal district court rulings that are being dropped almost every day
Hmm.
that purport to enjoin the federal government, the presidential power in every aspect. What was the one that just dropped today? It was just obscene.
I think,
How
was it the that he couldn't change, he didn't have the authority to change like the displays at Independence
yes,
Hall, like the
yes,
executive branch didn't have that
yes.
authority. Like that's insane.
What federal judge thinks the federal judge has the jurisdiction to be
Hmm.
involved in such minutia of governance?
Hmm. Why is
But
the Park Service an entirely separate entity with no authority under the president, right? That's
yeah,
crazy.
how can the president not change the plaque? You
Right.
know, and I mean, something so trivial. If he doesn't have trivial powers,
Hmm.
he doesn't have any powers. I
Right.
mean, like you can't say, well, he can order a missile strike in some foreign country. Because I have my issues with that kind of stuff too, because Congress is supposed to declare war. But anyway, but he can do all these other things, but he can't change the display cards on a particular museum or historical display. I mean, that's.
Hmm.
But anyway, my point is that he's abiding by all these ridiculous orders and appealing them and winning. And that's one thing you could say. There's some criticism of the Department of Justice under Trump in Trump second version, but my God, they're racking up victory after victory after victory. They're just being very patient about it, and some of the criminal prosecutions are going sideways because there's jury nullification in the grand jury, which is a thing. But back to my point, he is really, by asserting the executive's prerogative and abiding by Supreme Court, Circuit Court, District Court rulings, he's really reaffirming the rule of law in a very emphatic and practical way that will benefit us generations into the future.
Right.
Because he's not saying, which he could, Marbury versus Madison was just made up out of whole cloth. The Supreme Court has no right to order the president around. And F you, I'm
Yeah.
not going to do anything that you say. You can decide this case with regard to these parties, and that's fine. We'll abide by that for, like Juan Valdez. Okay, we can't deport Juan Valdez, but we're going to deport everybody else.
Hmm.
And so, what is the argument that the Supreme Court gets to make decisions that apply to more than the parties? I don't know, because a circuit judge or a district judge in my neck of the woods, that they have authority and jurisdiction over the parties.
Right.
And so, but he's not saying that. He's really reaffirming the constitutional order, and he's culling the administrative state, which will benefit all of us and empower us all as individuals and get us back to a constitutional order. And he's going to force the legislature to do their jobs, which is fascinating.
Hmm.
In the meantime, everybody's calling him a tyrant wannabe. It's like, holy smokes. But that's Trump.
Yeah.
So sorry about that segue, but I think what I really like about this is it's such a great description of conservative thought, and it encapsulates it in such an effective way. And I have to agree with literally everything that's written in this introduction.
Yeah.
I mean,
No,
I,
it's
I was like, there's no wrong note in the entire thing. and I'm very excited about reading the rest of it.
Yeah, no, it seems great. And then he says, after talking about, what exactly we're studying here, he says he limits the field even more to essentially Burke's school of conservative thought, Edmund Burke's school of conservative thought, right? Looking at English-speaking conservatism, because he says conscious conservatism in the modern sense did not manifest itself until 1790 with the publication of Reflections on the Revolution in France. And that year, the prophetic powers of Burke defined in the public consciousness for the first time the opposing poles of conservation and innovation, right? The first time it's really clearly articulated, at least in Russell Kirk's view, right, the need for tradition, for conservatism, sort of in the modern sense we have it. I have not yet read Reflections on the Revolution in France. It's been sitting on my bookshelf for forever. Speaking of libraries, it's part of the Harvard Classics, which I think you got for my 17th birthday. I think an incomplete set of those from Books Galore and Crystal
Yes.
or Festus,
And what did I pay for it? Like $50 or
something like
something?
that. Yeah, it's like the
Yeah, no,
first
listed.
25 volumes.
Yeah, listed for something, and he came down on the price. And
Oh, really?
yeah, I didn't even ask him to. I said, "Is this the price of it?" Oh, yeah, I'll do it for if you buy them all, I'll do it for whatever. It was like 50 or 60 or
Wow.
maybe, it was a good deal. But yeah, I'm listening to that. Yeah, my Spotify account, I could either listen to podcasts or whatever. But I have so many hours a month that I could listen to audiobooks without getting kicked. Anyway, so I'm listening to Reflections on the Revolution in France,
Hmm.
I don't think it has a copyright anymore because it's old enough.
Yeah,
And so this was like self-published. So it's somebody just reading it, right? It's not like a professional,
just some guy
like a
sitting at
celebrity.
home reading the book into his phone.
And, and and thank God he's doing it because I am listening to it. But he has a terrible voice. It's just hard to listen to. I'm sure I'm going to get used to it, but by the end of it, I'll think I'll be talking like him. But yeah, I have to get past that. But otherwise, and it's a long one. I don't know how many hours. How many? I have 10 hours and 26 minutes
Wow.
left
Well, there you go. There you go.
to listen.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've always wanted to read that, and I'm trying to make use of my time when I'm driving to another county for quarter. So I'll
Right. Right.
pop one. Done.
I did appreciate though too, talking about Burke being sort of the founder of American conservatism, that he didn't deny earlier influences. Sort of
Yeah.
on page 6, talking about that, which is very important. He says, still more in Richard Hooker, one discovers profound conservative observations which Burke inherited with his Anglicanism, which Hooker drew apart from the schoolmen and their authorities. But already one is back in the 16th century, and then in the 13th, and this book is concerned with modern problems, right? It's a very good nod that, this ideology wasn't just invented, out of whole cloth, by Burke in 1790, right? This is something that
Right.
has longer roots, but for our purposes, modern sort of
Right.
Anglophone conservatism, you have to start somewhere. Let's start with Burke.
Yeah. And it is really the start of the modern era in
Mhm.
political thought, I think. I
Yeah.
think the revolution in France was such a break from precedents, I
Mhm.
think. I mean, there were always bloodlettings and revolutions and all that, but it was such a oddly cerebral mass murder movement
Mhm.
that I think it really did set up this dichotomy. And in the previous page, I like how he describes. He says this book is a criticism of conservative thought. But he also mentions, like at the beginning of the second paragraph, that this is really a study of that's limited to British and American thinkers. Number one, so he does a good job of, okay, we're going to focus on these topics, and the book could be 10 times as long if any author wanted to really tackle the whole subject. He mentions something in the second line there. He says, only Britain and America among the great nations have escaped revolution since 1790. And that's so true. I mean, all other great countries, we arguably are in the middle of like maybe a soft revolution if we let it get a little more out of control. But but I think that's interesting and very true.
Mhm.
That they haven't had that kind of upheaval in these two countries, and so that allows for the political system and that kind of dichotomy between the left and the right to be more stable. I think a
Mhm.
little bit more um, easier to explain, but also there's a lot of different conservative thinkers and different lines of conservative thought. So I love, we're going to get to it, I'm sure, in a minute, like I think it's 6 factors, that make what he believes to be conservative thought. But there's a huge fight, and there has been since Trump came on as I alluded to earlier, Trump came on the scene. It's like there's never Trumpers, and there's, the old neoconservatives, which I guess they were never conservatives because now they're just Democrats and left-wing Democrats at that, endorsing Madami in some cases. And so, you're seeing a big struggle now. We're going to see it a lot more in the next 2 or 3 years because Trump's going to be off the stage formally. And then it'll be like purity tests, loyalty to Trump or Trumpism or conservatism. And it'll be really interesting to see how that plays out. And I think we have a lot of really, really smart people that are coming up. I mean, if you just take the three off the top of my head, of course, J.D. Vance, the vice president, super smart, articulate guy. I've been really super impressed with Rubio as Secretary of State.
Oh, yeah.
I think he's the strongest cabinet member.
And very relevant to this book. Did you see his speech in Munich over this weekend?
I have not listened to the whole thing.
I've seen parts of it. Yeah, I haven't listened to the whole thing either. I skimmed through the transcript, I should say. I didn't read the full transcript, but very powerful, very good speech.
And you have Bessent, the Secretary of Treasury, which is a fascinating development because he actually worked, I don't know if you know his history, he worked for George Soros. Mm-hmm. So George Soros made his big payday when he essentially destroyed the British currency, shorted the British currency. And that was, Bessent worked on that. And Bessent was certainly left of center. I don't know everything about his politics, but he was, obviously a student of Soros and money supply, but he is super intelligent, also married and gay. I don't know if he has kids or not. So that's kind of an interesting anecdote because everybody said, thinks that Trump's this, bigot against everybody who's in a protected class. And he couldn't seem to care as long as they get the job done and they're loyal to him. Matters to him. But in any event, but then you have DeSantis, who I think is still a player. And he is super smart. He's another lawyer. Is Rubio a lawyer? I know J.D. Vance went to law school. I don't know if Rubio is a lawyer. He might be.
Sure. Rubio went to University of Florida, though. I know that about him.
Yeah. But just those three are super smart. I mean, they're effective, but they're also very well informed about conservative thought and political philosophy. Rubio, of course, used to be more of an interventionist and pro-immigration, and he had a lot of other views. Of course, J.D. Vance used to be anti-Trump before he was VP, not like a week before or something. And then DeSantis, of course, came up, through Congress, and then the governor of Florida. So I think, that I'm really looking forward to all these theoretical, these descriptions, these conservative thinkers, because I think we're going in for a very practical lesson in the next 4 to 8 years of whoever's going to be running on the Republican side, who can articulate these effectively and to get support and whether or not they even believe in these general principles. I think it's going to be fascinating to see how it all shakes out.
Yeah, but before we list his 6 canons, which I think are very good, he has this phrase in the paragraph right beforehand. He says, "Conservatives respect the wisdom of their ancestors. They are dubious of wholesale alteration. They think society is a spiritual reality possessing an eternal life, but a delicate constitution. It cannot be scrapped and recast as if it were a machine." Right, there's something real that's about a society. This is especially clear when we talked about when we read Orestes Brownson, who was a big influence on Kirk himself. That's how I found out about Brownson, was reading Roots of American Order. But the idea that, no, there is something real about society, right? It's more than just individuals sort of kind of agreeing to work together. No, there's something that exists, over and above them, right? There's something that unites them in society, right? That is a sort of a reality in and of itself, which I think is a very, very important point to lay down.
I'm surprised you didn't make the Tolkien reference. It's not just a machine; it's human. And just like he was he would be anti-AI to an extent. I would expect, or certainly anti everybody having a robot in their house
right?
to do all their menial tasks.
And
At
if
least
and if
they
the
would.
many listeners are interested in learning more about Tolkien's political beliefs, they can read my article that was just published in Public Discourse on his philosophy of language and how it connects to his political views.
Yeah, it's excellent article. I read
Yeah.
it.
Oh, thank you.
You could tell, as we discussed earlier, that it was pared down from like a $50,000 volume. Uh, it was thick, as I described
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Very good. I mean, I don't mean that like thick-headed.
Yes,
I mean,
no.
like it was dense, not like dense and stupid. Yeah, I mean, like it was thorough,
hmm
but not
That,
boring.
that's a good word. Yeah, that's a good word. Stick with that one.
Thick, dense, and thorough.
There you go. There you go. But yeah, I do think he's pretty much spot on when he defines the six canons of conservative thought, and I'm going to list them out here in brief, and then we can talk about them a little bit more, especially the first one. I was says
By the way,
one. Yeah.
I shared that article with Lucky Palmer on Twitter.
Who?
You know who Lucky Palmer is?
No, I have no idea who that is.
He has a company called Palantir.
Oh, yes, of course.
And it's a defense company.
Yes, no, I know what Palantir is. Yes,
He was the founder of that.
yes, yeah, yeah, yeah.
He is a huge Tolkien
Yes, well,
aficionado.
that's why it's the named Palantir.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, there's another one, another defense contractor that's called
Andoril. Yeah.
Anduril.
Mhm.
And isn't it amazing? I think it's fascinating how much influence Tolkien has on the upper echelon leaders
Mhm.
of science and industry in the United States and
Yeah.
internationally, but really in the United States in particular. Elon Musk is a big fan. I don't know if
Yeah.
you're a big fan of Elon Musk, but he's of course read Tolkien. All these guys, big
Mhm.
fans of Tolkien, and they appreciate it. It's not just like, oh, it's a good story and down with the orcs. They understand the mythology and the meaning behind it. And there was an interview with Lucky Palmer I just listened to or watched. It was a podcast type interview, and he quoted Tolkien
Hmm.
at length. And it was fascinating because he's, I don't know what he is politically before all this stuff, but he really believes in the peace through strength
Hmm.
argument.
Interesting.
And kind of like the men of Gondor had to be ready,
Mhm.
and because if you can't be ready after the threat is already upon you,
Yeah.
and that's his whole argument why he's in that field.
Yeah, I forget who it was. There's a leftist politician in the midst. I think some conservative politician quoted Tolkien in defense of Trump in some online exchange, and then the Democratic, representative or senator, whoever it was, commented under it, "Gondor has no king. Gondor needs no king," as if that was, Tolkien praising the idea that there would be no king of Gondor, not realizing that that is the words of the wicked, steward of Gondor, Denethor, and that the third
Yes,
book of the Lord of the Rings is titled "The Return of the King." And
of
right,
the king.
that's just absolutely
Yeah,
ridiculous.
that
There was an
is.
article sometime back. I think it was in the lead up to the 2024 campaign, when J.D. Vance quoted Tolkien at some political event, and I think it was the Atlantic, might have been the New York Times. Big hit piece on like conservative fans of Tolkien, essentially saying Tolkien was a huge leftist, which he wasn't. But there's a great like image that they use like as the splash image for the piece, where it's J.D. Vance like smoking a Hobbit pipe and wearing a wizard hat, and it's like it just makes him look
Yeah,
awesome. Like it's
yeah.
it's just praising him actually.
Well, I'm reassured by it because I'm very wary of the AI and the
Hmm.
robots and these super intelligent weapons
Hmm.
that they're all producing at scale. And I'm super worried about it, but it does reassure me
Hmm.
that the leaders, which is really Musk, who is, that has the rockets, which are essentially no different than intercontinental nuclear ballistic missiles. I mean, it would be super easy to convert them. And then Anduril and Palantir and who knows who else, but that all those guys read and support Tolkien's philosophy that's at the heart of those books. I find that very reassuring.
Hmm.
because it's it's nerdy too, and so oh, I'm smart, I can quote Tolkien, or I can speak Elvish. I mean, there's that kind of like Star Trek convention ish about it,
Hmm.
which I recognize. But as long as they can get the philosophy behind it, I'm much more reassured. Kind of like if a person is a true Christian, which is almost impossible to know, unless you're God,
Hmm.
whether somebody really is a believer of it, like truly, and they're trying to be good or whatever. Then they're going to be, if they are, then they're going to be better at whatever they're doing. You can trust them more.
Hmm. Yeah.
Uh, Hell, if they believe in the Ten Commandments, you can trust them more. They're going to lie to you a drop of a hat.
Right.
But it's really fascinating because I read the books to you guys
Hmm.
when you're young, but it wasn't because I was a big fan of Tolkien. I had never read them in my youth. I
Hmm.
don't even know if I heard of them. I think you probably I think you might have suggested it to
I
me,
think I might have. Yeah.
or maybe your mother.
Well, I
Probably.
remember in particular, Sam will never admit this, but he was the one, Sam, my older brother, for all the listeners who don't know him. He had suggested, he had never read it. He had suggested that I read The Hobbit because he knew that the movies were coming out when I
Yeah,
was like 8 years old. He suggested I
yeah.
pick it up at the library. So he's responsible for all of this, actually. I don't know if he remembers that, and he would never admit it if he did,
Well,
but he is.
he takes credit for anything that's good.
That's true. Well, he wouldn't think it's good, is the thing.
Oh, that's not true. That's not true. He chuckles along with all your stuff.
That is
He's proud of you.
that is
Uh,
true.
He's a brother though, so he can't like say it.
Yes.
You
No,
know,
of
you
course. Of
can't
course.
say you're proud of your brother.
Yes.
You just have to feel it and
Right. Right.
let him know by osmosis.
Right. Right.
Anyway,
Um,
sorry about going down that path,
no, that's all right.
I think Tolkien has been a huge influence on conservative thought.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think after this book was published, I think
Hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, The
uh,
Lord of the Rings wasn't published, wasn't starting to be published till the year after this came out.
yeah,
1954 is when Fellowship was published, and then Two Towers, Return of the King were 55. The Hobbit
yeah,
was already out, but
yeah,
not as many adoring sort of adult fans until the publication of The Lord of the Rings.
yes. All right, so I interrupted you like 10
That's all
times.
right. The six canons of conservative
Yeah.
thought that he lists out, which I think are pretty accurate. One is belief that a divine intent rules society as well as conscience, forging an eternal chain of right and duty which links great and obscure, living and dead. Two, affection for the proliferating variety and mystery of
Okay,
traditional
okay,
life.
hold on.
Well, I'm just going to list them and then we can go back and discuss them.
No, I want to list them because you list them too long, right?
Sure, sure.
I want to abbreviate them.
Okay.
So one is you believe in a divine intent for society. Like
Yeah.
society is created with some sort of divine intent and purpose. Uh, that you have an affection for the variety and mystery of traditional life.
Hmm.
That's number two. Number three is civilized society requires orders and classes.
Hmm.
It's, structure. Four is property, possession, like personal ownership of property and freedom are inseparably entwined. The next one is what was the next one? Man must put a control upon his will and his appetite. You can't just have everything all at once and have no consequence. And then last, change and reform are not identical.
Hmm.
So just change for change's sake is not the same as reform. Uh,
Yes.
I think that's a better, if I may say so myself,
Sure. Sure.
brief summary, and
Yes.
then we can
Yes.
elaborate.
Yes. Well, I think the final
Different.
five I think are pretty clear, right, in what he's talking about there. The first one I think is really interesting, and I think it's notable that he lists that first, right? The divine intent that rules society, right? That there is a purpose to things. I really like his last line discussing that portion where he says, top of page 8, he says, politics is the art of apprehending and applying the justice which is above nature.
Yeah.
That there's something higher and unchanging and eternal that we are appealing to. right? That it is something true that is above the world. That is what society should be aiming towards, right? You have to appeal to that justice, right? But politics is an art of apprehending and applying it, right? Politics isn't perfect. You're not going to apply perfect justice in every single case. You cannot design the perfect society, but you should be aiming at that justice which is above nature, right? That is what politics is the art of. And I think that's a really good, succinct description of what conservatives do believe, right? That there is an eternal, just thing above any circumstances in the world.
I think the conservative public believes it. I
Mm.
don't know that many politicians believe it anymore.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think this is maybe of them. There's one other one, but this one in particular, I think, is the most ignored,
Hmm.
or they just give lip service to, where you can just see it's just not true. It's false,
Hmm.
as Gollum would say. Because I don't know that a lot of politicians that get to that level, federal level, senator, presidential candidates, really believe in divine providence.
Yeah.
Really believe in it. And I think a lot of that has to do with how many compromises they had to make to get there, and how could that be divinely inspired? But the Lord works in mysterious ways, as they say, and so I think it would be better, and I think on the left that they would be opposed to this concept, I think a lot of people left or right would consider this irrational. Like, what makes America so special? That you hear that all the time. We're just another country. Well, Obama, said it overtly. Like, well, the Greeks think the Greeks are great too, or whatever the other country he used as an example. It's a famous aside he gave. Like, somebody asked him, do you believe in American exceptionalism? And he says, well, like other countries think they're exceptional too. Yeah,
Right.
I think America's exceptional, but everybody does. Well, then you don't really
So then
think you're
nobody's
exceptional.
exceptional. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't
Exactly.
really believe it. It's his way of kind of obfuscating,
Hmm.
to use
Yes.
a $1 word.
Yes. I will say, I think, I don't know if this is the other one you had in mind, but number five, I think, is the one that's also ignored by a lot of either politicians or people who label themselves sort of vaguely conservative. But the idea that you have to put a control upon your will and your appetite, it says tradition and sound prejudice provide checks upon man's anarchic impulse. I don't know, we've talked about this before, but like the past, 30, 40 years, sort of the lumping of libertarians under sort of vaguely right-wing things just because by happenstance a lot of libertarians and conservatives have agreed upon like the same policies, but libertarianism and conservatism are actually not really closely allied at all in their philosophy, right? That there should be limits on the will and the appetite, where the libertarian impulse I think is closer to the left, and sort of pursuing happiness, pursuing whatever makes you feel good, in some ways. Now that's an oversimplification, but sort of the hedonistic impulses are not part of the right, are part of
I,
conservatism.
I agree with you, but I think it's more of a matter of degree or
Yeah,
emphasis,
yeah,
because I don't I believe that conservative philosophy,
hmm,
and even politicians will say, you should moderate your impulses. It's not. I think I'm seeing that more and more,
hmm,
because I think libertarians are not part of the conservative coalition. Clearly, they were more closely aligned in the 90s and early
right,
2000s. I was thinking of conviction that civilized society requires
mm-hmm.
orders and classes, the way he describes them. And I think what he's talking about there is almost like a meritocracy,
Mm,
where you have you have to have leadership, you have to have elected leaders, and it's not just the direct democracy where
hmm,
we're all truly equal, like the belief that we're all the same in the eyes of God, but we're not the same with regard to everything else
hmm,
on as far as private property, and who gets a promotion, and who doesn't, and who is rewarded with whatever they deserve or they don't deserve. I don't know that either political persuasion in America is willing to say that out loud. And And I don't think it's really going to change until there's like a town hall, campaign stop, and you have a politician where somebody will get up and say, well, you're talking about reforming this program and that program, but I'm on a fixed income, and what you're talking about is going to hurt me. And until our politicians are ready to say, well, why are you on a fixed income?
Right.
What is your fixed income? And the answer is going to be, well, I'm on disability. You're like, how old are you? You look like you're in your 30s. And if you dig down, you're going to find out this person's been on the dole.
Right.
And until a politician says, well, you know what? You should be happy with what we've been giving you as a gift because you haven't earned a damn thing. Because until we do that, we aren't supporting this thought that you get, what you're entitled to receive or what you earn.
Hmm.
And I'm not saying that, if you do have a disability, you shouldn't get benefits. That's not what I'm saying at all. But there are millions. Well, let's put it this way. I have personally met, just in my county, hundreds of people have no business getting disability benefits. I mean, no business getting them. It's fraud on a gargantuan scale pre-COVID. I mean, I knew about this back when I was a young prosecutor in the late 90s, early 2000s, where people were saying, well, I can't pay my fines and court costs until X day of the month because that's when I get my disability check.
Hmm.
And I'm like, what are you disabled from? You just kicked the blank out of four guys at a bar.
Yeah.
Number one, why are you at a bar? If you're so disabled, and two, you could probably kick the crap out of me. And this was when I was in my youth, and so I don't think that anybody is talking about this, and I think that's part of this argument about these classes. It says the only true equality is moral equality. All other attempts at leveling lead to despair and enforced by positive legislation. Society longs for leadership, and if a people destroy natural distinctions among men, presently Bonaparte fills the vacuum, and that is so true because we're going to have a mob.
Hmm.
We have to be able to distinguish between charity and entitlement.
Yeah.
And we aren't distinguishing that on either conservative. You never hear conservatives say, well, you're just not entitled to that.
Right.
We're not going to give it to you. We're going to cut it off because
Right.
you're not entitled to it. And well, I'm going to have difficulties. And until we have conservative leaders to say, well, okay,
Right.
yeah, we all have difficulties. Join
Yeah.
the club. Welcome to party, pal, as they said in Die Hard.
That's true. But
Right
then he
after the
defines,
body landed on the police car.
sort of what are the four common areas of attack, from the other groups, right? He says there's been many groups,
Yeah.
the rationalists, the romantic emancipation of Rousseau and his allies, utilitarianism, the positivism of Comte School, collectivistic materialism of Marx and other socialists. But he says what sort of unites these attacks, right? They're very varied in all of their beliefs, but they attack conservatism for four reasons. One, because they believe in the perfectibility of man and the illimitable progress of society, right? The idea we can just get better through education, naturally get better, like our human nature can get better by altering the environment. Two, there's a common...
Hold on, let's be clear, because I don't know if it's clear. It's clear you're saying this is what the left, the opponents of
Yes.
conservative thought, believe. So
Yes.
they will not agree with conservative thought for these four reasons.
Right, exactly.
Number one, they believe that men can be perfected through education or training, like as Plato believed.
Right.
See, Plato was a leftist. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. And then he says second is contempt for tradition, right? Reason, impulse, materialistic determinism are preferred as guides to society. Third, they believe in political leveling.
Wait. Let's
Oh
stop
my
at that.
gosh. Uh-huh.
Do you know who also had contempt for tradition?
Mm-hmm.
Plato. Plato was a leftist.
Yes, I'm not a Platonist. I I do not swear any allegiance to Plato. I think a lot of his ideas are bad.
Well, why are you assuming I'm criticizing you? I'm just mentioning
Oh
it.
my gosh. Third, he says, and this relates to what we were just talking about just a second ago, political leveling, order and privilege are to be condemned, right? Total democracy is to be preferred. And then economic leveling, right? The idea that the right to property doesn't really exist. And that's been a very, very strong attack from the left in recent years. And he says you might try as a fifth point to define like a common idea of the state's function. He says, but they all very much disagree on how that actually practically works. They agree on these principles. He says one can only remark that radicals unite in detesting Burke's description of the state as a divinely ordained moral essence, a spiritual union of the dead, the living, and those yet unborn. Right? They detest that idea of the state, but they all very much differ in what they view as a positive definition of the state.
So what are your, I've been monopolizing conversation. What are your thoughts about these four qualities, as he describes them, of people that attack conservative thought?
Yeah, I think he's correct, and I think especially that first one is most important because especially just like how the first point for the positive side on the conservatives is I think the most important there, right? That there is something above human nature that is just, that's something we can never really achieve, but that's something that we're aiming for, right? The left inverts that, or the left or whoever else we're talking about here inverts that because there isn't an idea of sort of an eternal thing, right? It is the idea that we can just break out of all bonds of our humanity. We can be sort of the best thing. And that's just not the case. And so many just terrible ideologies are founded on the idea that we can just be better by nature than we are by improving X condition, et cetera, et cetera. But that just doesn't actually happen, right? And that just ruins society because now you're just trying to, like Plato in many ways, trying to micromanage things, expecting some change that will never actually happen. And you're going to make a lot of terrible decisions to try and make those things happen. But we, by nature, cannot be perfected.
Yeah, and I've been giving a lot of thought to this. I think, a great summary, and agree with everything you just said. I've been thinking a lot about this, and there was an article in First Things magazine for the February issue that was about, it wasn't, what was the word for it? It was praising greatness in others. I'm dropping the thought, but it was a great article about your own personal humility, to be able to see the greatness in others and really appreciate art and competence in others. In some ways, that's an acknowledgement that other people are better than you. And I think there's so many people that are miserable in our society because they don't understand that none of us are perfect. There is no way to become a perfect person. We're not perfectible. So it's not because of outside forces or things that happen to you that cause you most of your problems. I think most of, it's like you can be happy, especially in America, wherever you are, because nobody that doesn't have significant mental health issues, biological, significant mental health issues. Nobody's starving in the United States.
Right.
It's so I mean I know that's a low standard, but so many of us are doing okay, and we can do better. But I think this is really that strikes at the heart of what's wrong with our society is that there's so many people are just offended by the idea of original sin, and that a lot of our problems are caused by our own inadequacies, our own mistakes.
Yeah.
Sometimes when relationships fail, they fail because you screwed up. Maybe the other person screwed up too, but and there seems to be this lack of accountability, and I think that's a big thing. And then when they think about, you talk about public policy, if you believe that we can fix everybody and everything, well, then you're not going to have fail safes. You're not going to have all these things that you need in a government program to make sure that people don't just walk in and steal all the stuff, because you don't account for it. It's going to happen. If you have enough money and enough moving parts, somebody's going to steal some of it. So you have to be able to account for it after it's stolen. You have to prevent as much as you can, and then you have to be able to audit it so that you can catch the people that do steal it, because somebody's going to steal some of it.
Yeah. That reminds me of talking about trying to perfect human nature. We've been doing a Tolkien reading group, reading some of his short stories and essays here with a group at the Thomistic Institute here on campus. We just read through his Leaf by Niggle recently. You made a face at that name. It's not what you think I'm saying. But it's a really great short story about essentially about purgatory and subcreation and sort of what purgatory looks like is sort of allegory for that. And at the end of it, one of the characters sort of reflecting says, "Oh, if I had done this differently and this differently, my life could have been better in this way." Et cetera, et cetera. And I forget who says this. It's like a personification of God or the virtues. But he says things could have been different, but they could not have been better. Right? That you could not have, improved yourself by nature in some way, right? We can, sit and think, oh, well, if this was different, this material circumstance was different, my whole life would be fundamentally improved in this way. Sure, that could be true. That you could have made this decision that would have made you have more money or a bigger house or whatever. But ultimately, you cannot, have changed anything that would have perfected you more by your nature, right? That's just not how that happens. But that's what that made me think of. Another mention of Tolkien there.
Yeah.
But I think that takes us just about to the end because
Yeah.
he gives those four principles. And I'll just read his last sentence here on page 10 before we really get into the meat of things next time. 'Cause he says, if a conservative order is indeed to return, we ought to know the tradition which is attached to it, so that we may rebuild society. If it is not to be restored, still we ought to understand conservative ideas, so that we may rake from the ashes what scorched fragments of civilization escape the conflagration of unchecked will and appetite. It's a very powerful sentence there about the need to understand conservatism and society so that we can hopefully restore a conservative society, and if not, recover what's left after it all crumbles down.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm optimistic or not today, but
Yeah.
as you know, I come in waves, either optimistic or pessimistic. I guess maybe somewhat optimistic about the future. We'll see how it all shakes out. But I think I think these thought leaders in our industry and in the IT, and the fact that so many of them are smart enough to leave California with this new law that they're going to pass to seize all their assets, hopefully be a gift to us all, because it'll disperse them more throughout the country, at least to Texas and Florida and some other states. But so I get a little optimistic that we can weather the storm, and the last thing we need is to come to blows against fellow Americans, because if we can't kind of right this ship, there's a danger there, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
And no conservative wants that. You see some conservatives, oh yeah, we should have a divorce, a national divorce. No conservative thinks that.
Yeah.
Nobody that's a thinking person would espouse that in reality, because
Yeah.
it'd be similar, although much more violent and deadly than the split India and Pakistan, because we're so intertwined. It would not be a civil war like the North and South.
Right.
We're marbled in among each other. Even in California, there's like at least 35% conservatives.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to war with 35% of the public that's within you,
Mm-hmm.
they're already behind enemy lines.
Right.
Or here in Missouri, it's 60-40, 70-30. But yeah, I mean, they're people on my block, I'm sure, are leftists. I'm sure there
Yeah.
are people who are right of me, and there's moderates or whatever. And I think people who say, the Republicans are Nazis and fascists and throw around these things, as even Russell Kirk is talking about, these defamations of conservative thought, aren't thinking it through. I mean, how
Yeah.
horrible it could be very quickly. And so anyway, now I'm getting pessimistic. But
No, that's good.
at the beginning of that little monologue, I was optimistic, and
Mm-hmm.
I think as long as people are talking and thinking, well, we should be all right. But
Yeah.
anyway, I think the conservative thought is the only way through.
Yes. Well, I think that's a good point to end on, unless you have any other final thoughts for this episode.
No other brilliant thoughts.
All right. Well, yeah, I'm looking forward to this book. It was great so far. I'm looking forward to the next chapter, which will really just be talking about Edmund Burke, it looks like, and sort of the start of modern conservatism. You can, of course, follow us on Twitter at ULMTD Opinions. This has been Season 14, Episode 1 of Unlimited Opinions. I have been Adam Bishop.
I'm still Mark Bishop.